Welcome to the Black Male Impact. Today we have as guest Dr. Mordecai Brownlee. Mr. Dr. Brownlee, welcome to the Black Male Impact.
I'm honored to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Dr. Cross.
Man, it's a pleasure having you here. Dr. Brownlee is the current president of Community College of Aurora, and he's been in education for 18 years, and that's commendable when you hear the statistics of Black men in education. But before we get into the conversation itself, I will ask Dr. Brownlee. I know he normally goes by Dr. Mordecai to share more about himself so you can get to know who he is before we get into the conversation today. Dr. Mordecai.
Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, my friend. Yeah, I will tell you that I'm a product of community college, and it's an honor to be able to serve in this capacity in a sector, in a space that was so transformative for myself. As you've already stated, sir, I've been serving in higher education now for 18 years, going on 19 years. First began my career in residence life, and then from there, moving into other aspects of student affairs. Then from there began to teach, but also kept my foot in student affairs and just has continued to climb the charts. I've served this is my 7th institution that I've had the pleasure of serving. I've been teaching now out of the School of Business and Leadership for the University of Charleston, as well as I still teach for the doctorate program for Lamar University, previously taught for Morgan State University. So all in all, roughly 9 years of teaching, whether it be the undergrad or graduate space. As well as serve as a columnist. Now, I'm really excited about for Diverse Issues in Higher Education magazine. So I serve as a columnist for Diverse, but previously, since the pandemic, have served as a columnist for EdSurge, which is a leading educational technology platform. And so just very honored to be able to do this work, to connect with good folks like yourself, good educators like yourself, who understand the responsibility that we have in front of us to advance the lives, social economic mobility within the communities in which we serve, and seeking to truly transform the lives specifically of so many young Black men.
And that is important and very admirable of the service that you are providing for the students. I know they can connect, because I hear your champion messages and they are relatable. And I can just imagine how appreciative the students are to be reminded that they are champions, because sometimes that's what we need to hear, that we are capable of doing whatever we are doing. So, man, I also thank you for your commitment for the work that you're doing. So we're going to get into the conversation itself, and I know we'll get to talk more about some of the things that you're currently doing based on the question. So my first question to you today is, what is the mindset that it takes to make a positive impact?
It's a mindset of purpose. I think that, and I just had the pleasure of talking to high school seniors and juniors and sophomores at Delta High School this morning, sophomores at Delta High School this morning in the Denver, Colorado area. And I was talking to them about the power of discovering your purpose, your God-given purpose. And it takes experiences. And in many cases, like I was sharing with them my personal story, you may be becoming someone that you've never even seen in your family. But by leaning deeply into this idea of purpose, why have I been put here on this earth, and what is the work that I've been charged with doing for a greater purpose beyond myself? I think that that's then a mindset that then begins to unlock what I would find to be various chambers in terms of how we view ourselves, how we view society, and how we view our responsibility to society.
I really appreciate that perspective, because, when you talk to individuals, that's one challenge they sometimes have, where it's hard for them to figure out what their purpose is. But you find when individuals find what their purpose is, the way they show up in life is different. So, that's a great reminder to all of us on the importance of purpose, or the mindset of purpose when we're thinking about making a positive impact. Because if we're going to be more than who we are, we have to have something to drive us to do whatever we feel compelled to do. So I really appreciate you sharing that reminder and the importance of finding one's purpose. So my next question to you, and most of the conversation going forward will be around Black men and what we can do to make a difference in what we're currently doing as well. So my next question to you is, what advice do you have for the men listening and how they can play a role in creating positive change?
I think it's so important. We talk about this in business and industry fairly frequently about doing environmental assessments. My mother, who raised me by herself, told me as a child, she says, "Baby, you have to manage your life like a business." I didn't understand the essence of what my mother was telling me at that given time. Now, as I have a family of my own, and a wife and all these other aspects of life have now taken on, I understand the power of it. Not just professionally, but personally, that it's so important that we manage our lives like a business. So the takeaway then I would say for those that are watching, those that are listening to this is to say, as with any good business, there's an infrastructure that is then required in order to ensure success. And one of those is understanding a proper environmental assessment. This reality that you got to be honest with where you are and what's going on, what it is that you've inherited, what it is that you can control, what it is that you cannot control. And then from there began through that assessment to develop a plan towards the desired outcome. But then it also requires some additional infrastructure about it. We talk about a board of directors, but essentially a board is accountability partners. Who are the folks that are more focused about your success and your transformation than appeasing you to make you feel good about yourself? And I think that as Black men, that is then very important that we really unpack and think about what it is that we're fighting and seeking to overcome, the responsibilities that we have in front of us, what must then take place through us, being present within our household, being present within the lives of our children, being present within our communities, and truly undoing so much trauma and harm and bringing restoration back into our personal lives, our professional lives, the lives of those that we love, and our communities as a whole. And I think that that is all a part of the work that we have in front of us to answer that question.
I really appreciate the environmental assessment because that's not what we do all the time. And
Mm,
if we're not aware or we haven't been guided to make that a part of what we do in regards to what we want to accomplish and who we want to become, we will not do it, because it's not something that we are aware of. And I also appreciate you sharing, once we decide what we're going to do, knowing what's in our environment and what challenges we may have to deal with, having board of directors, having people in our lives that will hold us accountable, not just someone who is going to tell us what we want to hear, but people who will challenge us so we can become more of who we are capable of becoming so we can do the work that we want to do. So I really, appreciate those perspective because I think that is not what we hear all the time. The environmental assessment, we need to know where we are. And we need to know also, is this a good fitting for what we are trying to accomplish? And if it's not, maybe there are other places that we can be, but also, even if it's not the most perfect place, there are things that we may need to contribute to make it a better place. So I really appreciate you sharing that. I know the listeners will be as well, maybe start taking that assessment of their environment. So I really appreciate that, which leads me to my next question. How can we, as Black men, help to change the narrative today? And you can speak from any perspective when it comes to changing the narrative.
What I would say is and without saying names, because the heart of what I'm about to say isn't to put anyone in a negative light, but this goes back to accountability. I'm tired of seeing, especially as African American men, that there are those that are able to rise to certain ranks, national platforms, global platforms, only to learn that they lack integrity in their personal lives. They're great at entertaining, they're great at being in position, but yet the other aspects that we're looking for and depending upon them to have present within their own personal lives, in terms of their faithfulness to their spouses, their significant others, their presence in the lives of their children, and that their community engagements are worth more than just a marketing ploy to help get them out of a bad light. There needs to be the true essence of what we should be providing to be the image of true Black excellence, and understanding and redefining that Black excellence is worth more than just the cars that we drive and the clothes that we have on our bodies and the houses that we drive to. It means nothing if we're doing all these things, accumulating debt that we cannot then pay off. That is not Black excellence. Black excellence is not making these social media posts, hoping and seeking likes, and truly are empty internally, but yet seeking the validation of others. That is not Black excellence. So I think that what must happen with the narrative is us as a people making a shift in the ways in which we have validated one another, what we have claimed to be successful, in redefining that, and getting less away from the hollowness of just images and the appearance of success, and more into the true essence of what I believe success was designed to be for us.
Man, that is well said. And to take it from the point of, as you mentioned, integrity, that is really important, because one of the things that I've seen, even in the education space, is that we get into these spaces and then there are certain things that really get to us not to live up to the expectation. We fall prey, we compromise to different things that are not aligned with the work itself. So it's important. So go back to, as you mentioned, the integrity and what
Yes.
Black excellence is. It's not just about doing things for people to like us, but standing true on what we value, the standards that we have set, not to be in spaces just for people to like who we are and forget, what the real purpose of our existence is. And I think that's a great reminder to all of us as Black men
Mm.
who are thriving, who wants to achieve at a higher level, but also want to make a great impact. Because,
That's right.
it's not just about getting there, it's about being there and staying true to the standards or the values, the core values. Because there's no sense to get there and then you compromise your values because you want to fit in with others, you want to be liked by others, so you're going to compromise. And I think that will only make it harder for the
Mm.
next generation, because the next generation will have to start from the bottom again.
That's right.
And there's
That's right.
no reason for us to leave certain things for the next generation to do.
That's right.
We have to make sure we raise the bar and maintain the bar, so the next generation have good characteristics to follow as we press forward in changing the narrative today. But being in the position that you are in as a president, right? Do you have, like, say, Black male students come to you and say, man, I would like to be a president someday? How does that feel to you and your response to those students?
It feels it's an honor. It's still something that I will tell you that I'm amazed by, because this was not my original journey, Brother Richard. This was not, I remember working overnight shifts at the airport, going to community college, working from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., would show up to the community college, half sleep, still trying to take, at that time, they call them remedial math courses, but developmental math courses. I wasn't even taking classes at the college level, and then to fail developmental math, and just really begin to believe this voice in my head that I was not even college material. If it wasn't for me being, laid off, the seasonal work that we had no longer being necessary, and someone saying, Mordecai, go back up to the college and become a work study student. If it wasn't for that, if it wasn't for people beginning to see skills in me that I had no idea that I had, I didn't know, that no one had ever poured into me, like that mentorship, seeing other Black men like Dr. Williams. I want to honor his name. He's since passed, has since learned last year since passed, but watching him in financial aid and seeing a Black man at the college and just being in his presence and watching how he carries himself and how he carried himself, and the conversations and things, and watching other men like Dr. John Harris Other brothers had come through and paved the way in beginning to study. Dr. Walter Bumphus beginning to study these men and watch what they do and says, okay, hold on, I can make a career in this. This could be me. And then now these other brothers now see me and now I'm that name for them, man. I mean, it's almost about to bring tears to my eyes. It's amazing how this all works. But this was not the original path, so I'm honored, but I also understand the responsibility of it because they're looking to me. So then I've got to continue to deliver on what this looks like, what it can look like, but to also be honest, to say that this isn't about pursuing perfection, it's about pursuing purpose. And that by creating a community of all of us, encouraging one another, loving one another, creating spaces where we could be vulnerable with one another, and charging one another to be better. Man, it's I think that that's the essence of this. And there's brothers that I'm looking to today that I get inspired by. I'm looking at them, the Rufus Glaspers, the Dr. Walter Bumphuses, looking at these brothers, the Michael Bastons, other black men that are out there, Dr. L. Marshall Washington. As I continue to look at these brothers and where they have been, now I understand that I've still got a ways to go. But again, just the amazing cycle about how this works. As I continue to strive, then there'll be other brothers coming up. And they'll look at the Dr. Richard Crosses. They'll look at the Mordecai Brownlees. And now we inspire a whole nother generation behind us. It's just amazing how this works, man.
And I really appreciate you sharing the struggle before the success. Because a lot of times what people do, they look at where you are, not realizing the struggles that you have overcome to be where you are. So I really appreciate you sharing that part of your journey where you were working, and sometimes that's how life is. The path that are the part that we didn't really like really is what transformed our lives. Because being laid off, if that didn't happen, maybe you continue on that path.
That's
But
right.
experiencing that challenge puts you on a different path, and the path that led you to where you are right now. And I can just imagine, those students, just being you're in an environment, where you start your journey and knowing the impact that being in a community college can have on a student. I think students will really appreciate hearing. I know they do. I appreciate, hearing from you, being that, you're not telling them something that you read. You are telling them something that you have experienced, and knowing it is possible to start here and to become whoever you want to be. So I really, appreciate you sharing that. And this next question that I'm about to ask is somewhat part of what you just shared, but I'm still going to ask the question anyway. What or who has inspired or influenced you to pursue the path that you're on?
Man, let me tell you, I've already thrown out some names there, but let me tell you that the very first, and now there's some names I got to bring into the space that they're not necessarily African American men.
Yes.
But if it wasn't for these people,
Right.
the very first presidential mentor that I ever had was Dr. Harold Nolte. He is still a president. He's out in Kansas now at Dodge City Community College. That is the very first person, Caucasian man, that I remember telling him and saying, "Sir, I want to be a college president," and him not laughing, him not give me that good old pat of, "Oh, okay, all right, all right." I mean, actually, this man made himself as a college president, made himself available. And at that particular point, when I met him, I was a director. Some would say, low on the totem pole. I was doing good work, but this man could have easily passed me up like so many that came before him that passed me up, and they wanted to see the sweat equity. They loved to give me the thumbs up, but didn't want to spend the time with me. Didn't took the time to take my wife, and him and his wife to dinner, and to take time and spend that kind of investment. So I always honor that brother, and I hug him every time that I see him. I just saw him recently in Chicago for the accreditation conference because he has no idea what that investment meant. Another person I've got to honor is Dr. Adina Williams Lawson. Dr. Lawson is currently still the president of St. Philip's College. I served as a vice president for her for 5 years out there in San Antonio, Texas. It's a historical Black college that is also a Hispanic serving institution, and it's a community college, and it's the only one in the nation that holds that profile. Dr. Lawson, let me tell you, man, I always tell her, it gets her laughing. I say I'm a proud graduate of Adina Williams Lawson Institute of Leadership because, man, let me tell you, you're gonna work hard, you're gonna put the time in. But she showed you how to lead an institution, and also gave me the behind the scenes look at the sacrifices. This is not an 8 to 5 job. You don't get to clock out on this one, not this one. There is no clocking out. You got to take care of yourself. You got to prioritize family. You got to preserve yourself, but there's no clocking out. It don't matter where you are. You are still advancing that institution that you've been charged with serving, and gave me a good look at that and what that looks like. And so it's folks like them that have made themselves available, have been willing to give me the behind the scenes look of what it takes to really do this work and to do it in the spirit of excellence.
And thanks for sharing that, because sometimes what or where we need to go will not be from who we expect will lead us there or provide us the blueprint. So we have to be open, knowing that when a person wants the best for you, that person may not always be who you expect the person to be. So we as Black men also have to be open to be guided and to be led in a way in the direction that we want to go, because I think that is important. So
Hmm.
we have to remain open-minded when we decide that we want to be the best version, because sometimes we may not have a Black male to provide the guidance to us, and and that's just how it is. And if we remain closed off, we may not get the guidance that we need to advance. So I
That's
really
right.
appreciate you sharing that, because sometimes we sit back waiting for another Black person to provide the guidance. Yet we have individuals in our space currently who have done the work, who have learned what is necessary to be successful. So we have to be open. So I really appreciate you sharing that. Although this is about Black men, but guess what? As Black men, we have to be open to learn,
That's
know
right.
where we want to
That's right.
go, and be ready to be a student,
That's right.
to learn what it takes to be successful and to get to where we want to be. So I really appreciate you sharing that, having mentors that sometimes may not be who we are. And just as you mentioned, the lady, Dr. Lawson, that's what he said.
Hmm.
Yes.
Hmm.
As
Hmm.
you said, sometimes it's going to be a woman to provide us the guidance and the
Absolutely.
support and the opportunity, so we can step into our greatness. So it's always great to be open to the opportunity to advance, to grow, and to become the best version of ourselves. So I really appreciate that. So my next question to you is, what is your perspective on the current climate of Black men in society today?
Mm. Brother, I don't know if we have time. It's a powerful question. I will tell you that let's talk about the positives.
Yeah,
I think that the positives that I see is that there is an understanding now more than ever
yeah,
that to obtain and get a hold of information now is more accessible than I think it's ever been.
yes,
The opportunity is what is the information that they're seeking.
correct.
And I think that in comes, I think the power of what you're providing through this platform, which I continue to thank you for,
Appreciate it.
sharing your platform and the work that you're doing, the platforms that I create through the work that I do for others. We've got to continue to put good information out there,
Correct.
transformative information out there, because we never know at what point what we're doing, what light bulb it'll help go off for someone who's seeking light, who's seeking knowledge, who's seeking information. And so I think that that's in terms of the state of young Black men and Black men in general. I would then say that I think there's an understanding that information is accessible, but then the opportunity is are we properly still training ourselves to seek the right information? That's a whole nother conversation. I think that the positive in terms of our current state is that we're understanding Black economics more than ever.
Correct.
I think that there's enough information out there that has made itself in terms of exposures in pop culture to understand that economics and Black economics, the power behind that. But for anyone that's watching this and listening to this, I would also say the economics of your culture, the economics of your identity, whatever that may be. I think that there's enough information out there now to where we understand the power of how to circulate that dollar within our respective communities. The opportunity, though, lies in that we live in a society, unfortunately, that is riddled with contradictions. And it is riddled with bias and still hatred, and self-hatred at that. And so then how do we continue to break down this misinformation, reprogram, deprogram ourselves, and properly gain the knowledge, understanding to optimize what is an infrastructure that is available to all of us to take advantage of, but it requires the right knowledge, the right understanding, and us addressing what has been some traumas and harms that has misinformed us and caused us to look at the world a bit differently. So I think that the state of Black men, young Black men at that, is one of opportunity. There are some positives, but yet there is still work that must be done in terms of how we define certain aspects that are critical to the identity of who we are, which I think gets down to, I think, the deepest aspects of the opportunity that we've got to figure out how to address. And I don't have an answer on it, brother. I think that it takes us mobilizing respectively within our communities, within our places and spaces of control and impact and influence to be able to bring about the right understanding of what productivity looks like, what honesty looks like, what having a moral compass looks like, what being responsible looks like, with being an engaged individual in our communities and an upliftment. What does it look like to have community service engaged in our everyday aspects of life and how we see the world? But we've got to figure out how we take back ourselves and our communities, I think, to then get to a better state of understanding. Because without that work, that mobilizing work, I never forget telling an audience, a crowd that I was giving a keynote to, we've got these social media activists. And I do believe the social media activism serves a role, but it takes more. I've been out there and I've had my children in the marches. Certainly, if I knew that there was a space where I could have my children, I've been out there and I've showed them, whether it be the Martin Luther King marches, whether it be the Cesar Chavez marches and the Yes We Can and the Si Se Puedes. And by the time that we finish marching, we still have work to do. So have we properly educated what happens in social media, what happens in published works, what happens while we marching, what happens at our places of employment, how do we properly serve and get involved? I think that this is all a part of what's going to have to shape the state, because I think the state we see the resources are available, the information is available, but I don't know if we properly value it in the manner in which we should. And it may take a momentum, the creation of a movement. And I think it's happening here, Brother Cross, between you and I being engaged in this conversation, especially the conversations that you've been having all over, brothers all over the country, and I dare I say the world, that we've got to keep this momentum building.
Man, I do believe, as you shared, we need to take our community back. And by taking our community back, just from what you're sharing, we have to be the example, to
Mm,
sum up what you just said, to be the example in where we are, or at where we are, model the behavior that we want the next generation, the current generation to model, to show up in integrity, to be the light. But also what you share that I really like is the part with the Black economics,
mm,
where we have to start empower our community and realize the importance of empowering our community. And we
yes,
empower our community through the things that we do. And as you mentioned, that we have to be part of what we want to see change. It's good to talk about it. It's good to write about it, but it's important that we participate in those changes that we want to see,
that's right.
because it's not going to just happen. And it takes numbers, because the more people see us, the more serious they will take us. So it's important that we engage in the change that we want to see. And you shared something is that I want to also bring up, and that is the misinformation, because there's so many things out there that can distract us. And if we're not seeking the right information, we will continue to do the things that society have been socially constructed for us to do. And so seeking the right information will help us to choose or make decisions that will better serve us. And I think we have to be cognizant of what we are paying attention to. And even the people that we are following and listening to, because as you mentioned, we're all here to learn. We don't know everything. So it's important that we tune into individuals who are being champions within their space to empower their space, because we can learn from anyone from anywhere. We just have to make ourselves available and stay connected, to those who are doing the work to make a difference. But as you mentioned, that we need to be part of the change. But
Yes.
also what I like from what you said, let's focus on the positive, because, there are a lot of people focusing on the negative when it comes to
Right.
us. And, there's so many platforms that share negative things about us as Black men. So
That's
if
right.
we're going to create a change, it's important that we focus on the positives. And I think that is a great reminder for all of us if we're going to help change the narrative when it comes to what we do as Black men. Also, that leads me to my next question. What change? You may
Mm,
have answered part of this in your response previously, but what change do
mm.
you want to see in general and amongst Black men?
I will tell you that we have to figure out as Black men how to stop disrespecting, but disrespecting is not the word. It's amazing to me how we still have this crab in a barrel mentality that shows up in too many spaces. I even think about pop culture amongst African Americans as a people. There's one thing to hold one another accountable. It's a whole nother thing to create an ecosystem of hatred, of segregation within ourselves. And so I think that this is part of what must shift. It has to change. And I also think that this all comes down to the redefining of the definition, new definition of success, new definition of love, new definition of what this should look like. And I think that this is the generation, brothers like you, myself, we're coming along. We don't watch the game long enough. Now it's time to be a part of the movement to change it. And this is not to say that it hasn't been happening before us,
Yeah.
but it is my hope and prayer that what is happening now is a movement. It's a resurgence of what I think those that came before us saw for us, but distractions came about that took us off course. And I think that by us remaining in tune with purpose, in tune with what love should look like, what respect should look like, then there's those of us that as time goes on, we're being put in position. And we're being put in position professionally and in positions of power within our communities. And as these placements begin to happen, then it is so important that we study the mistakes of the past so we don't make those mistakes, that we create that infrastructure that's going to hold us accountable. But now we're moving into what was the dream that those that came before us truly had of what this was to look like. And we can figure out how to take this thing further than it's ever been.
I know the listeners will have to replay that part so they can get it. They need to replay that part so they can get it. Because man, you have shared so many things that we need to hear or we need to be reminded of. So it's important. So I was listening to what you're saying so much, I forgot, what all I need to respond it to, because I was so into what you're saying, especially the redefining of self, redefining of what success need to look like, and the knowing that this is not new. We just have to build on the foundation and make sure this time around we do the work and do it with integrity and
Mm,
move from the crab in a barrel mentality. I think that is, we need to hear that, and that needs to be said over and over and over and over, because it's like we have the resources, the natural resources, we do have it.
yeah,
Innately, we are great people. We can do so much, but
that's right.
if we're not going to work, even if we're not working together, like we should not be doing anything that's going to pull the next person that's trying to
That's right. That's right.
doing the work back, because that's a disservice, not It's a disservice to self. It's a disservice to oneself. If you are going to pull another brother or sister back from doing the work that they feel compelled to do. So, you sharing that we need to redefine success. We need to study the mistakes of the past so we don't make those mistakes.
That's right.
And also learn what was, the good things that
Mm-hmm.
happened in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can build on the good things and learn from the mistakes so we can do better going forward. So, man, I was just listening into, what you have said. Myself will have to go back and replay, being that I'm also a student on this
Mm-hmm.
journey. So I have to learn as well as I go along so I can be the best that I can be
That's
to
right.
serve the people, the community
That's right.
as I go forward. So,
That's right.
that I really, just appreciate that perspective because I think it's a great reminder to all of us, as we continue on this journey. But as you had shared earlier about being in the march and stuff like that, what does that do? How do you feel about being in that space and just standing on your values, being out there in the community? How does that feel to you?
I think it gives a deeper sense of community for those that have never experienced that before. There's so many different ways that you can get involved, whatever the movement is. I like to be a part of marches that are towards the advancement of equity, that are going to address a certain historical context, which provides space and place for people to have dialogue about true knowledge, true understanding of what we're seeking to still fight to overcome today. Prime example of that is understanding a Juneteenth march, right? It's more than just a holiday. I have personally lived in Galveston, Texas. I know where Juneteenth comes from. I think it's important that people take the time to understand it's this movement and what that even means.
Right.
Certainly, we've had the MLK marches. But then you've got the different civil rights conversations that have come about in different ways now. We're watching what's playing out with these global wars and conflicts. I use this as an opportunity to even educate to my fellow students now, and I will tell your listeners and your watchers here to get engaged with the Council on Foreign Affairs. They have what's called a global conflict tracker, and I do my best without over promoting it, but to share with our student body, the over 9,000 students that we serve here at CCA, to say, listen, you all need to know that while your television is telling you that there is war here, that there are other students that identify from other parts of the world that still have been attending here, and their stories, their conflicts are not making the 5 o'clock news, the 10 o'clock news, but their folks are dealing with war and have been dealing with war for X amount of time. And what are we doing as well to bring healing and understanding in spaces of dialogue for them and who they are and how we can educate one another to understand what has driven these conflicts that are taking place all across the world. And so I think that in itself, when we march, it's marching for that understanding, but that we are a beautiful people, that if we delve deeper into the essence of who we are, we would understand that we have more in common than we have that creates difference within us and around us. And it's so important that we call out the game for what it is, and we call out and say, you know what, that's a part of the system that seeks to destroy us. That's a part of the system that seeks to distract us. That's the part of the system that seeks to continue generational poverty.
Right.
That's part of the system that seeks for us to have dependencies on controlled substances that seek to then break our families and our lives apart. And we've got to get to the point to where we're smarter than that, and we can build those communities. So I think in those marches, in those spaces, we create the environment for there to be a sense of social awareness, engagement, community, but bring about knowledge, and hopefully along that march, however long that march may be, that there's reflection that's happening within us to say, I'm out here, I'm moving my legs, I may be chanting, I may be holding a sign, but now what is the work that I am doing within myself, or what is the work that I have failed to do within myself. Because when you finish that march, you should be better than before you started.
Man, that is powerful. And I'm glad you shared that, especially when it comes to being a part of community or the marches. It, as you mentioned, that it provides a deeper sense of community. We get to learn more about what's going on. And also, as you mentioned, as you're closing off, once we take part in those organizational marches, we should be better as a result of it, because we should start asking ourselves questions so we can be better as we go forward. And also, as you mentioned, also as well, is that it's not just about us. You know, what's happening affects the community and everyone in the community. So that's also a great reminder for all of us as we continue. So my
Yes, sir.
next question to you is, what was a pivotal moment in your life?
You know, I have to certainly continue to give credit to my mother, my mother who raised me as a single mother, the sacrifices that she made, the wisdom that she poured in to me and my sister. Very grateful for that. I think that one of the most pivotal moments, and I'll bring on it to his name, Dr. Joseph Silver. I never will forget. I was my career up until this point in higher education had me serving in primarily white spaces, institutions, PWIs, and so it really I thirst for the opportunity to see African American men at the top of their game in those spaces. And I remember working at this rural institution and it needing help, it needing support. Some things needed to be corrected, and they had to call on this man, Dr. Joseph Silva, who has served in so many other spaces, and is a fixer. He can look at it, he can spot it, and he knows what needs to move, and he understood how to build the infrastructure. And I remember sitting in that boardroom at that board meeting, watching him address this room. And him and I were probably, I want to be as accurate as possible, but may have been the only two black men that were in that entire packed boardroom, and looking and watching him just do his thing. And I says, man, whatever that is, I know I want it. Whatever that is, I know I want it. And I remember after the meeting getting a chance to try to just to get just a little time to say, sir, where do they teach that? Whatever that was you just did, where do they teach that? And that was the first time I learned about the American Association of Blacks in Higher Education. I didn't even know that there was an institute called LMI, Leadership and Mentorship Institute, that had been created as a training ground for African Americans to teach them how to lead in executive leadership roles in higher education. The stuff that I just didn't know. And so there's a whole community. That I got to call out was pivotal, because then I got a chance to meet folks like Dr. Roland Smith and other folks, Dr. Barbara Johnson, Dr. Henrietta Pichon, meeting these other people that have made sacrifices to educate folks like myself who want it, who want to understand the craft of how it's done. And so I just think it's so important that we continue to elevate those spaces, because I think what has happened is, Brother Cross, we've got too many people that are pursuing positionality, but they aren't prepared for the craft. And those are two different things. I think that that's part of that redefining. You want to be top dog, but you're not prepared to be top dog. You don't know what that looks like to carry that kind of weight and to carry that kind of mantle. And we need more folks studying the craft rather than trying to get into position.
Man, that is powerful right there, because and it is really important studying the work before the work. It's like you have to become the leader before the position, knowing what is expected of the position before you're in the position. And
That's
I
it.
think as Black men, that's how we will change the narrative, because people are going to see us. And I really admire Black men in spaces that are actually doing the work. And again, because I'm a student, I'm trying to learn. So I'm looking to see who is doing the work so I can learn from that person. But that's a really important point that you have made, where it's important that we don't only go after the position, but prepare ourselves for the position.
That's it.
Because as Black men, if we're going to change the narrative or change the story or the perspective or even the misconceptions that society may have of us, it's best for us to be prepared. Don't go out there and be who they already expect us to
You to
be.
be.
You know,
That's it.
man, that's the craziest thing. I tell you. And even my students, when I was at the university working, my student would say, Dr. Cross, man, you're always in a suit. And I say, you know what? I'm here to dismantle the
Mm,
falsification that they have created about us as Black men.
mm.
And the students, especially the male students, start asking, sir, where can I get a suit to wear? And when you give them a suit, man, in 2 days, you see those students in the suit, which really makes you feel good being
Yeah,
there to be that example. But I really like what you have said, to not only go after the position, but prepare for the position before you're in the position. Just as how you have seen the brother doing the work and have been excellent at doing the work. And then you want to say, man, how can I be that? So when I'm there, I'm that. Man, it's really important because, man, society already painted a picture of who
that's
we
right.
are. And
That's
if
right.
we are going to change what society have already said, we have to show up differently. And
That's it.
that means, going back to what you've said, we have to redefine who we are and don't care. We have to be unapologetic about being the best version of ourselves. So, man, I really appreciate, you sharing and even reminding us the importance of being prepared before we get there,
That's
man,
it.
because that is so profound. And, I just have to also give credit to you, as you said, your mom had really showed you what it takes to be your best self, because, when she had to work hard to make sure everything is right,
That's it.
that's always a great foundation, because we know what's not only the struggle is, but we know what being disciplined in the struggle is to get to where, or to provide to certain on certain level. Because despite not having certain things, having a discipline, not having all the resources you want, that's true discipline. It's not when you have the things you want. It's when you don't and still do what you're supposed to do. That's where discipline is. And which leads me to my next question.
Mm.
What life lesson have you learned late in life that you believe is important and can benefit this current generation?
You already began to hit the nail on the head, brother. I'll just call it back out. I just did an interview with the brother, Dr. Kevin Kruger. Those that may know his name, he's over 40 years in higher education, over 20 years of service, 30 years of service to NASPA, which is the one of the primary, if not the respective primary organization for student affairs in higher education. And I was just doing an interview with him, and he was talking about the difference between managing in the midst of prosperity and how that differs from managing in the midst of decline. And I think to what it is that you just talked about, brother, about the it is so important that we learn how to manage in the midst of adversity, to have discipline in the midst of adversity, and understanding that our emotions may lie to us, our thoughts may lie to us, but it requires a certain internal discipline to not act on those lies. I think that it is natural to have doubt. It is natural to wonder. It is natural to feel sad. It is natural to feel happy. All these things. But those emotions, if we're not careful, without discipline, without maturity, and without purpose, will be this energy that we will react to. And those reactions can totally take us backwards from the progress that we have made. Or it'll send us in a direction that is not even where we should be headed, but it was the impulse. It was the reaction. It wasn't the response. And so it's knowing the discipline, it's having discipline within us to be able to navigate those natural and expected emotions and those feelings. and what we do with those thoughts, and being able to have the internal discipline within to know how to cope when those feelings come, when to cope and how to respond when things don't go as planned. All is not lost. How do we pick ourselves back up and tap into that deeper level of resiliency? How do we find the plan A, the plan B, the plan C, the plan D, the plan till we get to where we need to be? How do we have the discipline to make the changes that we need to make in our lives? Whether that be our friend base, our support base, it may be location. It's time to move. It's time to move on. It's time to pack up and move on. What does it look like to make those changes, but to have the internal discipline within to be able to create those spaces and make those changes? And I think that that is what I have leaned more deeply into as I've went along my journey that has paid significant dividend in my life, specifically winning that battle of the mind. And the mind should not beat me at my own purpose.
Man, that is profound. That's a profound response. So I really appreciate that. And again, I will let the listeners go back and listen to it multiple times because that they need to. We all need to listen into the understanding of being disciplined, especially in adversity, and because that's when it's most important. Because acting on impulse at times can cause us more than we would like it to cause us. So it's important that we learn to be disciplined, especially in difficulty or dealing with adversity, because that's when it's most important. Not when everything is going well, because we all can do what we're supposed to do when things are going how we want it to go. So I really appreciate you sharing that with us today. But before I ask my final question, where can the listeners find and help you and support you with the great work that you're doing, please?
Thank you, brother. My website, it's Dr. Dr. Mordecai. It's drmordecai.com. My published articles are there, the podcasts are there, the webcasts are there, updates are there, provided keeping folks in tune and up to date with what it is that's going on. Please subscribe. Certainly, whenever this goes live, brother, this interview, I'll be sure to share that with that newsletter with my subscribers as well. And then certainly booking opportunities for those that want to create opportunity for me to come to you and have this conversation with your community, with your college, your university, your organization. I would love the opportunity to do so.
Okay, thank you. And what Dr. Mordecai didn't say for your students, he shared champions messages weekly, if I'm not weekly,
That's correct.
that
Yes, sir.
your students will definitely benefited from. So you can check out those champions messages. They are powerful. So I just want to throw that in, being that he didn't share that. So I just want to, because I've seen those messages myself and I've listened to them, and they are really encouraging and empowering. So others will benefit, from those messages.
Thank you, brother.
But my final question to you before we end today's conversation, what impact do you want to have on the world?
I'll answer that by just stating my personal mission statement. I believe that everyone should have a personal mission statement. We work for these organizations that have one, and we'll work to the bone for them. But what are we doing to work for us? And so my personal mission statement is Mordecai E.M. Brownlee empowers the lives of others and builds systems that empowers the lives of others. And so with that mission statement, it guides me in everything it is that I do. If it's about building people or creating systems that's going to build people, I am all for it. And if it does not align with my personal mission, I don't touch it. I don't do it. And I think that by having a mission-driven life enables for all of us to live on purpose.
Thank you for sharing that. That is important. Having a mission-driven life is important. It helps you to stay away from the distractions and the things that are not aligned with who you are and your values. So I really appreciate you sharing that. And I just want to say thanks again for the work that you're doing, and thanks for being here on the Black Male Impact. It is a pleasure having you here on the Black Male Impact. And listeners, as always, our goal is to bring guests that we believe will share insights, perspective that we all can benefit from. And please continue to support the work so we can make the impact that's necessary and reach the people that's supposed to be reached. So please like, please share, and provide your support in any way possible so we can continue to do the work that we're doing. Dr. Mordecai, thanks again for being here on the Black Male Impact.
Thank you, brother.